April 28, 1945. East China Sea, 20 miles southeast of a Japanese convoy.
Lieutenant Commander James Patterson tightened his grip on the controls of his PB-4Y2 privateer at 15,000 feet, watching the radar operator track 4 faint blips on the scope. Japanese ships his crew would never physically lay eyes on.
In the bomb bay hung 2 ASM and 2 bat-guided missiles, weapons so advanced that the Japanese Navy still couldn't fully grasp what was striking them even after repeated attacks.
Target bearing 045, range 18 miles, the radar operator announced. These would be the only words spoken about vessels that living men sailed upon, now reduced to luminous dots on a cathode ray display. Patterson would release weapons that would steer themselves to their targets while his crew banked for home long before the enemy realized they were under assault. This was warfare fundamentally altered, not by bravery or marksmanship, but by American industrial capacity to mass-produce thinking munitions that removed human control from the act of killing. The Bat missile marked humanity's first step into automated warfare, a rudimentary beginning to what would become the era of precision weapons and drone strikes.
The ASM-N2 Bat was the world's first completely automated guided missile to see operational use.
Developed by the National Bureau of Standards under the direction of Dr. Hugh L. Dryden, later NASA's first deputy director, the Bat differed from German radio-controlled glide bombs that required continuous operator input. The Bat was genuinely autonomous, a fire-and-forget weapon that relied on its own radar to locate and strike targets without human guidance after launch.
Its specifications were extraordinary for 1945.
The missile weighed 1,880 pounds with a 10-foot wingspan and carried a 1,000-pound M65 warhead. Its S-band radar seeker could pick up large ships at distances up to 20 miles in clear weather. The guidance unit used analog computation, vacuum tubes, and servomotors to constantly adjust the control surfaces, keeping the missile on a steady glide path toward impact. Development began in January 1942, when the U.S. Navy's Bureau of Ordnance recognized the necessity for standoff weapons capable of striking ships beyond anti-aircraft reach.
The National Bureau of Standards assembled a team of aerodynamicists, electronics specialists from Bell Labs, and physicists from universities nationwide.
By March 1943, prototype trials began at Naval Air Station Patuxent River. What made the Bat revolutionary wasn't only its technology but America's ability to manufacture it in quantity. While Germany struggled to handcraft limited numbers of guided weapons, American industry produced roughly 3,000 Bat missiles, although only about 420 were deployed before the war ended. The program cost $12 million in 1940s dollars, around $180 million today, yet accounted for less than 0.1% of U.S. wartime production.
The Bat's combat debut occurred on April 23, 1945, when VPB-109 Squadron attacked Japanese vessels at Balikpapan Harbor, Borneo.
The mission faltered, both missiles malfunctioned, a reminder that even groundbreaking weapons had early shortcomings. Later missions, however, proved far more effective.
On April 28, 1945, VPB-109 achieved the Bat's first confirmed kill, sinking a Japanese patrol craft in Balikpapan Harbor.
The missile traveled about 9 miles from release to impact, with the aircraft already heading home when the detonation occurred. For the Japanese crew, death arrived from an empty sky, silent, invisible, and without warning. The psychological shock exceeded even the physical damage.
Japanese naval personnel had no conceptual frame for what was happening.
Their doctrine emphasized visual combat, ship-to-ship gunnery, and anti-aircraft fire against diving aircraft. The idea of a munition that could see and reason was beyond anything they imagined.
To grasp the importance of the Bat, one must understand the technological gulf between American and Japanese capabilities.
By 1945, Japan had entered the war with outstanding torpedoes, excellent night fighting skills, and highly trained sailors. The Type 93 Long Lance torpedo was arguably the finest in the world, exceeding the range of any American counterpart. But while Japan refined existing technologies, the United States created entirely new classes of weapons. The Bat integrated miniaturized radar, analog computation, gyroscopic stabilization, and automated control surfaces, technologies Japan not only lacked but had difficulty conceptually understanding. Japanese engineers examining captured American radar gear could identify individual components but often failed to understand how they functioned together as a unified system.
The gap extended beyond technology to industrial philosophy. American production emphasized standardization, uniformity, and mass manufacture.
Every Bat missile relied on interchangeable parts built to exact tolerances.
Japanese production remained largely artisan-based, with components hand-fitted by skilled workers. This meant the U.S. could build complex guided weapons faster than Japan could assemble conventional bombs.
The historical record shows the Bat missile achieved modest but meaningful
success. On May 1, 1945, VPB-109 sank a second small vessel, Likely a patrol boat or coastal craft. Off Borneo, the squadron's war diary records this as a successful attack on enemy shipping, though the exact vessel type wasn't identified. The most significant success came on May 28, 1945, when VPB-109 attacked the Japanese escort vessel Kaiboken Ani near Okinawa. The Bat missile struck the ship but didn't sink it. Ani survived, with heavy damage, limping to port for repairs that would never be completed before war's end, while not as sinking. This attack on a proper warship demonstrated the weapon's potential against defended targets. On June 18, 1945, VPB-109 achieved its final confirmed kill, sinking another small patrol vessel. Additionally, the squadron destroyed at least one oil storage tank on land, proving the Bat could engage stationary targets as well as ships. These three confirmed sinkings, all relatively small vessels, might seem modest compared to the thousands of ships sunk by conventional attacks. However, they represented something far more significant: proof that warfare could be conducted by machines acting independently of human control. The other Bat-equipped squadrons, VPB-123 and VPB-124, achieved no confirmed successes. Their after-action reports described numerous problems: radar seekers confused by land masses, humidity damaging electronics, and difficulty distinguishing targets in congested waters. Crews often jettisoned missiles without attempting attacks, rather than risk bringing armed weapons back to base. Post-war analysis by the Joint Army-Navy Assessment Committee concluded the Bat's effectiveness was mediocre at best in actual combat conditions. The weapon worked well in testing against isolated targets in open water, but struggled in the complex environment of real warfare. Radar clutter from islands, interference from weather, and the primitive nature of 1940s electronics all degraded performance. Yet even this limited success terrified Japanese naval personnel. They had no countermeasures, no understanding of what was attacking them, and no effective defense. Ships struck by Bat missiles reported being hit from nowhere by weapons that gave no warning. The psychological impact far exceeded the physical damage. The Bat missile program symbolized the fundamental difference between American and Japanese approaches to warfare. America could afford to spend millions developing a weapon that sank only 3 small vessels because the investment advanced technology that would define future conflicts. Japan, meanwhile, couldn't even conceive of such weapons, much less counter them. American production methods allowed rapid iteration and improvement. When early Bat missiles showed problems with humidity affecting electronics, engineers quickly developed better sealing methods. When radar seekers locked onto land masses instead of ships, software, though they didn't call it that, modifications improved target discrimination. Each problem identified led to rapid solutions implemented across the production line. Japanese forces, by contrast, struggled to maintain existing equipment. By 1945, fuel shortages meant ships often couldn't sail. Ammunition quality had degraded due to material shortages, and radar sets, what few existed, frequently failed due to lack of replacement parts. The technological gap wasn't just about advanced weapons, but basic industrial capacity. Behind the Bat missiles development were thousands of American scientists and engineers who approached warfare as an engineering problem to be Solved. Dr. Hugh Dryden, who led the National Bureau of Standards team, viewed the project through the lens of aerodynamics and control theory rather than military strategy. His team included specialists in fields that barely existed before the war: servo mechanisms, analog computing, radar technology. On the Japanese side, naval officers trained in traditional warfare found themselves facing weapons that negated their lifetime of preparation. The emphasis on spiritual strength, warrior courage, and aggressive tactics meant nothing against weapons that killed from beyond visual range. The samurai tradition that informed Japanese military culture had no answer to American industrial warfare. The Bat missile attacks created unique psychological trauma among Japanese sailors. Death in battle they understood and accepted, but death from invisible thinking weapons struck at fundamental beliefs about warfare and honor. Survivors reported confusion, helplessness, and a sense that they faced something beyond normal combat. While the Bat missile represented automated warfare, Japan responded with the opposite extreme, the kamikaze, where America removed pilots from danger. Through technology, Japan turned pilots into human-guided missiles through ideology. This contrast illustrated perfectly the different civilizational approaches to warfare. The kamikaze program, initiated by Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, explicitly aimed to counter American technological superiority through spiritual superiority. We cannot match American science, Onishi stated, but we have what they lack: warriors willing to die. The parallel development of these opposite approaches, mechanical precision versus human sacrifice, defined the final phase of the Pacific War. American sailors facing kamikaze attacks experienced terror similar to what Japanese sailors felt against guided weapons. Death arriving too fast to counter from attackers who couldn't be deterred. But where the Bat represented the future of warfare, kamikaze attacks were the last gasp of a martial tradition being crushed by industrial modernity. The Bat missile operated within the larger context of America's systematic strangulation of Japan through technological superiority. Operation Starvation, conducted by B-29 bombers dropping magnetic and acoustic mines, had by April 1945 virtually eliminated Japanese coastal shipping. Submarine warfare had destroyed most long-range merchant vessels. The Bat missile added another layer to this comprehensive interdiction campaign. While the Bat's direct contribution, 3 small vessels sunk, was minimal, its psychological impact multiplied. Effectiveness across all American operations. Japanese captains became reluctant to sail even in areas where no Bat-equipped squadrons operated. The mere possibility of guided weapon attack added to the paralysis gripping Japanese maritime operations. American planners deliberately enhanced this psychological warfare. Intelligence officers ensured Japanese forces knew about the Bat missile through various channels. Captured documents allowed to fall into enemy hands, radio broadcasts describing thinking bombs and ensuring survivors witnessed attacks to spread fear through the fleet. The Bat missile represented remarkable achievement, but also revealed the limitations of 1940s technology. The analog computer that guided it consisted of vacuum tubes prone to failure, mechanical servos that required precise calibration, and radar systems easily confused by environmental factors. Success required near-perfect conditions, clear weather, isolated targets, and functioning electronics. These limitations help explain the modest combat record. Of approximately 100 BAT missiles fired in combat, only a handful achieved hits. The weapon worked best against stationary or slow-moving targets in open water, away from land masses that could confuse the radar seeker, moving targets in congested waters, near coastlines, or in poor weather often escaped attack entirely. Yet even this limited success proved the concept. Every subsequent guided missile program built on lessons learned from the BAT. Engineers identified critical technologies needing improvement. Better radar discrimination, more reliable electronics, improved servo mechanisms. The BAT was less a finished weapon than a proof of concept that automated warfare was possible. The last BAT missile attack occurred on August 13, 1945, just days before Japan's surrender. VPB-109, flying from Okinawa, launched 2 missiles at what crews believed were Japanese vessels. Both missed their targets, a fitting end to a weapon that promised more than it delivered, but pointed toward a revolution in warfare. By war's end, approximately 420 BAT missiles had been deployed to the Pacific, with only about 100 actually fired in combat. The remainder were returned to the United States, where post-war testing continued until 1948. These tests yielded very disappointing results, leading the Navy to remove the BAT from inventory by the early 1950s. Yet the BAT's failure as a weapon system masked its success as a technological demonstrator. Every American guided missile that followed, from the Sidewinder to the Tomahawk, incorporated lessons learned from the BAT program. The engineers who worked on the BAT went on to lead development of Cold War missile systems. Dr. William Land, who contributed to the BAT's guidance system, later developed the Sidewinder air-to-air missile using principles proven by the BAT. Military historians debate the BAT missile's significance. Its combat record, 3 small vessels sunk, hardly seems worth the $12 million investment and massive engineering effort. Critics point out that conventional bombing achieved far greater results at lower cost. A single successful torpedo bomber mission might sink more tonnage than the entire BAT program achieved. However, this narrow view misses the BAT's true importance. It proved that guided weapons were practical, that autonomous systems could function in combat, and that future warfare would depend on sensors and computers rather than human skill. The BAT was the first step toward precision-guided munitions that would revolutionize warfare in Vietnam, the Gulf War, and beyond. The BAT also demonstrated American industrial philosophy, the willingness to invest in revolutionary technology even when immediate returns were uncertain. While Japan struggled to maintain existing capabilities, America explored entirely new categories of weapons. This approach to innovation, more than any specific weapon, determined the war's outcome. Japanese naval records from 1945 reveal confusion about what was attacking their ships. Some reports describe guided torpedoes, others spoke of mechanized aircraft, while some speculated about energy weapons. Their inability to grasp the nature of the threat made designing countermeasures impossible. Post-war interviews with Japanese naval officers revealed the psychological shock of confronting automated weapons. They understood being outbuilt, outgunned, and outnumbered, but being killed by thinking devices challenged their most basic assumptions about warfare. Several officers described the sense that they faced not merely superior machinery, but an entirely different understanding of what war meant. The Japanese Navy's Technical Bureau attempted to study the threat, but without captured examples or comprehension of the underlying technology, their efforts led nowhere.
Proposed countermeasures ranged from practical ideas like smoke screens to confuse radar to desperate suggestions such as suicide swimmers attempting to intercept the missiles. None were implemented before the war's end. The Bat missile's genetic legacy runs through every modern precision weapon. The principles of fire and forget attack, autonomous target acquisition, and long-range standoff engagement all began with the Bat. Modern anti-ship missiles such as the Harpoon and Exocet are direct descendants, using the same fundamental concept with far more advanced systems. The ethical issues introduced by the Bat, automated killing, the removal of human judgment from lethal force, and the mental strain of fighting enemies you could not see, foreshadowed modern debates about drone warfare. The Bat was the first weapon to kill without human guidance after release, crossing a boundary that military ethicists still wrestle with. For the U.S. Navy, the Bat offered crucial lessons about guided weapon development. The importance of reliable electronics, accurate target discrimination, and operational simplicity all emerged from its uneven combat record. These insights influenced every later missile program, saving years of development time and millions of dollars. The Bat program's statistics reveal both accomplishment and limitation. Total produced, around 3,000. Operationally deployed, 420. Fired in battle, roughly 100. Confirmed ships sunk, 3, all small craft. Ships damaged, 1, escort vessel Ani. Program cost, $12 million in 1945. Development time, 36 months from concept to combat. These numbers show a weapon that achieved modest tactical results but enormous strategic influence. The few ships destroyed mattered far less than the path open toward precision warfare. The ASMN-2 Bat stands as a turning point in military history, the first autonomous weapon to kill in combat without human control after launch. Its small tally of ships sunk hides its profound historical importance as the ancestor of every smart weapon that followed. To Japanese sailors who encountered it, the Bat represented technology so foreign it overturned everything they knew about naval combat. Death came from an empty sky, delivered by machines able to see in darkness and react faster than any human. They were the first in history to face truly automated weapons, and their confusion and fear marked humanity's entrance into an era where wars would be fought as much by algorithms as by soldiers. The Bat missile did not win the Pacific War. That victory came from immense American production capacity, superior logistics, and ultimately atomic weapons. But the Bat revealed the direction of future warfare: precision instead of mass, automation instead of valor, technological dominance rather than sheer fighting spirit. Every guided missile, smart bomb, and armed drone traces its origins back to those early radar-guided weapons released over the Pacific in 1945. Today, as debates intensify about autonomous weapons and the ethics of automated decision-making, we are still confronting questions first raised by the Bat. When machines can choose and strike targets without human involvement, who holds moral responsibility? How do warriors retain meaning when technology overrides human skill? What becomes of warfare when killing turns into an algorithm instead of a personal act? These questions, first posed by a 1,880-pound glide bomb filled with vacuum tube circuitry, remain unresolved. The Bat destroyed few ships, but it opened a door that can never be closed. The era of thinking weapons had begun, and warfare was changed forever. The Japanese sailors who died without ever seeing their attacker were the first casualties of automated combat. Their bewilderment and helplessness in the face of unfathomable technology prefigured every soldier who has since faced precision-guided weapons. They learned, in the worst possible way, that the future of war would belong not to the boldest fighters but to the most intelligent machines. The Bat missile flew into history carrying not just 1,000 pounds of explosives, but the end of one age of warfare and the birth of another, an age we still inhabit, still struggle to comprehend, and still strive to restrain. In that sense, the unassuming Bat missile, with its modest battlefield record and immense implications, may have been the most consequential weapon of World War II that almost no one remembers.